Dave Zumpano from the Estate Planning Law Center joining us here on the program. And Dave, hopefully you're somewhere where you don't need a blanket this morning. I don't know. -6 here in central New York. So,
yeah, I was someplace warm earlier in the week, but I came home this week. But I'll be heading back there as soon as I can.
Good. A terrible mistake that you're going to correct sooner than later here. I like it. It. Well, good to hear your voice, Dave. Happy New Year. And here we are into 2022. And some things have changed. Others haven't. And as I was just kind of teasing there, much more needs to be done to improve people's lives. And Dave, you help people do that, improve their lives, the lives of loved ones when it comes to planning and what we need to know and think of and ways to make that all easier, right, Dave? And you're going to continue in the new year, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's funny. Story this week recently, an elderly client, very confident, very capable, very able to sustain themselves and be on their own. And, my story is about how things change unexpectedly, right? We're always expecting a car accident or a stroke or something that requires a significant change in how we care for our loved ones. Well, this older gentleman, very independent, living a full life, gets COVID. Interestingly, it doesn't affect him physically too bad. He gets a cough. Mentally, it destroyed him. So you've heard of brain fog, right? With generally when people that get this, and this gentleman in his early 90s, the brain fog took on a whole different animal and really triggered a severe dementia where he would look at a fork and not know what to do with it. And this was a person living by themselves prior to COVID. And I was talking to my brother, who's a doctor, and he said, 92% of people over the age of 80 develop dementia or some form of it to a debilitating level from COVID. So it's just crazy that we have all these traditional ways that we think people age or change, and here was this family who dad was doing fantastic, basically living on his own, doing everything by himself, to now needing 24-hour care in a matter of 1 week, from getting COVID. And it's an example of all the things in life that we don't plan on. So the question is, do we plan for the things we don't plan on? And that's really what estate planning is, why it's so important. And I think when we think about it, one of the biggest questions I always get from people is, well, what do I need? Do I need a will? What's this trust thing? And then what's the difference in a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust? And so these are all the questions people think about, which maybe confuse them, which causes inaction. And I think the powerful thing is that if people understand a little bit of work, just a little bit of learning and understanding how this stuff works, and it literally takes a couple hours of time. And now even with the online services, it could take 30 minutes. I think it's really important for people to appreciate and not delay doing this stuff. Right. It's just so important.
So Dave, and along those lines, so someone who, and in your experience, someone who maybe hasn't even contracted COVID, or maybe they have and they're they've recovered just fine, but has all of this, or just over the last recent couple of years, has this just changed the way people are thinking about the way they're planning overall? Have they come back in and made other changes because of concerns or worry, or they are looking at things just differently?
Well, Chad, it's actually a little bit of the opposite. What we're finding during this crisis period is all the people who haven't planned. And they're not coming in to plan. They're coming in to solve massive problems that were caused by unforeseen things happening. So we're actually seeing the reverse effect where we're starting to see all the people who did not plan, and really the families coming to us in horror and going, "Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do here? What do we do there?" And and we're trying to help them put it all together. And I got to tell you, it's a very different scenario for family members having to come in and figure it out. One of the hardest things, and I want all of us to think about this, and I'm sure all of us have been involved in this at some level or another. Imagine having to make a decision for your loved one, your parent, your sibling, a decision to say, what would they want, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not a decision people really want to have to make. I mean, not that they're not willing to; they're willing to because they love. But they're so worried that they're going to do a wrong one. Is this what they wanted? And it's sad because I guess I don't know what it is that makes people not do it, I guess, but that's kind of, I wish they could spend a little bit of time in our office and dealing with these families who are trying to piece things together because there wasn't a plan. But, that's the challenge. That's the challenge of life. We're all busy, right? And the trick, I think, is, if you can get it done simply and as a process, a 1 or 2 step process to get this done, I think it's a good time for all people to talk about it. Those of us in the sandwich generation who have parents and children, we're caring for, you got a lot on your plate. It multiplies exponentially if something happens and the planning isn't done. So it's a matter of just prioritizing it and getting it done and understanding the difference and how simple it could be. A lot of people are worried about it's complex, costs a lot of money, doesn't have to. It all depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
So, Dave, if you're looking at an example of someone, like you said, who might have been hit by the unforeseen here, and now they're dealing with a mess that they hadn't planned for, if you're somebody who doesn't have something on the horizon that you're going to need to deal with, so essentially you'd be just planning for the future, for the unexpected. And so maybe you really haven't thought about this stuff. What's the first thing? Because I know this could be very overwhelming to people that haven't thought about it yet. What's the first thing that somebody should do to begin this process so that as they're sitting here listening to this, they could say, okay, at least I'll start asking questions, I'll start looking into it, and then take it from there. What's the first step that would be a good kickoff point?
Rocco, I love that comment because it made me think of a comment people always say to me, well, Dave, when should I do this, right? And you just made the magic words, if they do want to plan for the unexpected. So I always have a joke. I say, well, get to me at least 30 days before your heart attack, stroke, or disability, right?
Right.
And so then they laugh. So the first thing really, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but the good news is, the first thing is, when those loved ones come to me after the fact, after something's happened, the first thing I have to ask is, did they have a power of attorney? Because if they did not have a power of attorney, then there's no one legally authorized to do anything. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, did they have a healthcare proxy? Because if they didn't, then there's no one legally authorized to make their healthcare decisions. Now, with the healthcare decisions, in most cases, doctors will still accommodate the family's wishes. They don't have to. That's the key thing. That's why we like real healthcare proxies and that describe, do you want to be kept alive? Do you not want to be kept alive? Because that puts a lot of stress on the family having to make those type decisions. They'd rather have the individual make those decisions and the loved ones carry it out. But the one that we cannot deviate from and we cannot get around is the power of attorney. Does someone have the authority to make legal decisions on your behalf? Does someone have the authority to make financial decisions on your behalf? That's the most critical. And then finally, the third one is, well, if they've passed, if it's that kind of catastrophe, then what happens? Have they provided for where things go? Now, here's the problem. Most people have done a will. The problem is the typical will is 25 years or older. So imagine what you were doing 25 years ago and what your will would say if you did it 25 years ago. If you're one of the kids, imagine what your parents' will said 25 years ago versus what they would say today. That's the problem we have. So many things are outdated. Now, the good news is, as you guys all know, those 3 essentials, you can get right online now. We have the Guider app right on the, takes 35 minutes. You can have a will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. And so that's the essentials. That is so critical that those 3 are in place.
Right.
Yeah,
From there, then you have a decision around, okay, these are what I call defense, making sure you got a good defense. Now you have the option to go on offense and say, okay, I got the defense in place. If something happens, somebody could do something. But now what do I want them to do? And that's what I call the offensive playbook. You got to put together your playbook, and we usually call that a trust. A revocable living trust, when drawn properly, will be your rule book. We call it your playbook. What do you want to have happen if you become disabled, if you become sick? What if something happens to one of the people that you want to leave your assets to? Obviously, you don't want it to go to the in-laws. You want it to go to the grandkids. How do you make sure all that's happening? And then that's the next level, really, to get your playbook in place, and that's usually in the terms of a revocable living trust. And then the last level is, okay, I got my playbook in place, but now I have one more level of concern. I want to protect my assets. I want to protect them from lawsuits. I want to protect them from predators. And I want to protect them from long-term care costs. And so now that's the third level, which we call asset protection planning, which is the third level to say, okay, we've got your essentials in place, your defensive plan. We've got a good offensive strategy to say, what do you want to have happen? But now we need a strategy on top of the offensive strategy to say, now I don't want to just tell you what I want. I actually want to ensure that my assets are protected now from those predators or long-term care costs or other unforeseen liabilities.
So, Dave, what? And I know, as you mentioned, to start off the first part of that process through Guider, all that stuff available right there on the website. And if you have questions, I know you have the workshops, or you have so many ways that you can get a hold of the staff there at the Estate Planning Law Center. So, best way, give us a reminder before we have to run out of here, Dave. How do we find out more about this? If we're having these conversations, or we're looking, the best way for us to start to make a plan. How do we do that?
Yeah, so a couple things. I'm going to make a little twist. First way, have a little conversation with your family. The people important. So I used the example, I think a month or two ago, about a gentleman who called me and said he had a guy who was like his father who had gone into the hospital, and he was concerned because he never did his planning. Well, luckily he came out of the hospital. They worked together on the Guider app to build the will, the healthcare proxy, and the power of attorney. Why that was nice was because the individual creating the plan got to do it with the individual who he was giving the powers to, so that the younger person had an idea of what the elderly person wanted. That's a big help to the person you're asking to do these things. So everybody wants to say who's doing it. That's one thing, but the people doing it really want to do what the individual wants. So having that conversation, I think, is the first point. Then the second point is getting that education. So again, like for example, on our website, we have a lot of education there. You can Google a lot of things. And then ultimately, you can come into the office and we have workshops basically every week or every other week to talk about all these things and relate them to real things that you could connect with and you could relate to. And then you could do your basic documents, will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney right online at the leisure of your own home 24/7. And then you can also come in the office and do more of the offensive plan, putting your rule book together and doing your asset protection in the office. eplawcenter.com, E like Echo, P like Papa, eplawcenter.com is a great way. Call the office, 793-3622. Brianna or Tina will be there to take your call and guide you and answer your questions. That's another great way. Call in. They'll answer any of your general questions and help guide you in the right direction. If sometimes it doesn't need a visit to the office, sometimes it's something simpler, call in and they'll guide you.
Dave, perfect. Again, appreciate the time. I love hearing your voice, and next time we talk to you, hopefully it'll be a little warmer, and we'll have some more information getting into 2022. I know folks will be thinking about taxes and tax season, and maybe a little bit more about their money as well. But Dave, again, we always appreciate it. Dave Zumpano from the Estate Planning Law Center. We'll put the links up along with the interview later, and we'll catch up with you next month, Dave.
Thank you, gents. Have a great week and a great month.